Hey guys, Mono here with a quick breakdown of the latest Helldus patch, which is update 17.1. This is not a huge content update, it is rather a quality of life and balancing update, which also includes some new bug fixes and a few reworks. Basically, I'm gonna call this the medic and bipod update because that's the biggest change this update brings to the table. So what do you say we just dive straight into it? So let's first go over the changes to the medic, and then I'll give you guys my opinion on how this will impact the game. First off, we have now full HP on revive. So when you revive someone, you don't need to bandage them anymore. They just get full HP and are ready to go back into combat, which is actually pretty huge. There is now also the option to call a medic once you get downed, and for the medic to respond and say that they are on their way. You do this by using the communication wheel on the medic. It takes a bit getting used to, but it's actually very nice and can help you, respond if you're actually going to be able to revive someone or not, and for them to respawn if you don't want to use a proximity chat, or if they're too far. Medic bandaging speed is now 2 seconds. I believe this was like 2.6 before, or 2.5, and that also applies to self bandaging. And revive speed is down to 2 seconds from 2.6, which doesn't sound like a massive difference, but is actually pretty significant, and you can definitely feel the medic be a lot snappier, a lot quicker on getting those revives. There's also some XP increases for reviving and being revived, basically going from 30 to 75. I don't think that's going to change anything really, but it is a nice little added bonus. However, what I think is actually more significant here than the XP changes is the fact that you get more ammo now as a medic. So the carbine for the US forces, you get +1 clip. You get +2 smoke grenades for every medic kit, so that means you get to carry 4 smoke grenades, which is actually massive because smoke grenades are very, very effective in Helldus at denying enemies, line of sight onto their targets. I don't think you should be chucking these onto dead friendlies that you want to revive. You're better off throwing them towards the enemy to block their line of sight. But this is actually pretty huge. It's going to help a lot on frontline assaults, where having some smoke grenades for that cover effect is actually pretty significant. So this makes the medic a lot more viable, and the extra ammo, specifically on the Germans, you get +4 clips for the German forces, so that's 20 more bullets. That is absolutely massive. You can now sustain firepower as a medic, and you're not constantly running out of ammo, which just overall, these changes make the medic a lot more useful and a lot more viable to have in your squad. So now, if I were to say, should you play as rifleman or should you go as medic? I would probably say go as medic. Rifleman class is, unless you're playing German and you're going for that G43, which is incredible, you're better off playing as medic. So yeah, that's something I never thought I would say, but definitely medic is one of the go-to classes right now. And I just want to point out that it's actually really remarkable that the dev team managed to pull this off. Basically, think about how to improve the medic without necessarily changing the game, but just making it more fun, more viable, more useful. And I think this is going to have an impact in the game, but it's not going to be a massive change. So that's it for the medic. Let's talk now about the bipod rework, which primarily addresses 2 different issues. One being the range of movement, so your vertical and horizontal range. When you have your bipod set up, you couldn't really, go left or right to aim as much as you probably should have. That is now fixed. There is a lot more horizontal and vertical range than there was before, allowing you to set up and just control an area without having to reposition constantly, which was something you definitely needed to do before, unless you were extremely far away. Weapon collision is also fixed around machine guns, meaning you don't clip into objects as you swing around, so you're not just going over a tree or a piece of fence or stuff like that. I found overall the bipod to be a lot more consistent the few hours I played with it since the update. Overall, this is a solid change. It still does mean that there are some areas where you feel like you should be able to put the bipod on and aim at a specific angle, and you're not because of the new like collision mechanic going on. But it is overall a drastic improvement over the bipod mechanics that were in the game before this update. Alright, I know there's a lot of you out there that are gonna absolutely flip out when you find out about this new game mode, which is called the Explore mode. This is long overdue. Basically, you can now load a level offline and just walk around in it, use the admin camera, anything you want to do. This is actually pretty huge. So previously, you pretty much had to own a server or join an empty server with the map that you wanted to fool around in, but this loads you into an entirely offline map, and you can use any class, any type of soldier, basically anything. Unfortunately, I couldn't find a way to switch to a specific team before you spawn, so you always spawn as allies, it seems. You can't spawn as the Axis forces, which is pretty bad. I would like to try out things with German tanks, for example, on specific maps. You can't actually do that, and that really sucks. I hope they actually fix this. They add the option to choose which team you want to spawn as. However, you can spawn on both sides of the map, so on both headquarters. But if you spawn, let's say, as a tank commander, you can't actually use the German tanks, which just sucks, you know? You can practice with them in the practice range, but if you want to try out specific things with a specific tank on, you know, a certain map area, if you want to know if the tank fits through a specific path or something like that, you can't actually do that with the German tanks. Again, I hope they add that in the future, but this overall is such an improvement to the freedom the player has to test the game out, to try things out, to explore the map, to enter admin camera. You can enter admin camera in this Explore mode and just fly around, see the different, you know, control areas, think about your strategies, think about what you're gonna do. It is a massive quality of life improvement. So that's the TLDR of this patch. There are a few more changes that I will go into, but they're not as impactful or as significant as the ones that I just mentioned. For example, voice chat now carries on once the round is over, so as you're looking at the scoreboard, you can actually keep talking to your squad. You can talk to leadership if you're a squad leader, which is all good and very nice. You know, it didn't make sense to cut audio off when the round is over, so this is a nice little change. Engineers can now dismantle their own nodes, and officers and commanders can also dismantle friendly nodes. Again, this is a nice quality of life improvement. It's not a necessity. I don't think the game needed this, but it's nice to have. It definitely makes the engineer a bit more versatile if you want to change the position of some nodes. You know, it's all fine and good, I guess. There have also been a bunch more changes, like LOD changes to some objects, specifically to barbed wire to make them look better, and some new skins like winter skins for the tanks, vehicles, and basically HQs on winter maps, which again, it's very nice to have, but it's, you know, I don't think it's like a very impactful thing, right? What they did change quite a bit, and I think this is actually a downgrade from what it was before, is the flare gun illumination. So basically the flare gun now actually lights up the surrounding area, which is very cool for night maps and actually works, but looks extremely bad and out of place on day maps. Basically, it seems like they retain the same level of illumination on day maps, so you get this crazy color change to an area when the flare is up. It looks like you're inside an artificial space, like inside a disco or something, and the lights are on. It is very strange. It looks incredibly bad, especially inside buildings. So you can see here, it looks absolutely awful. And I think this change, they changed this to make it more useful in night maps. However, most of the time you're not playing night maps, you're playing day maps. So having this trade-off where it looks absolutely awful during the day, but it looks cool during the night, I would prefer it didn't actually work during the night and it looked fine during the day, you know what I mean? There's also some changes made to the buildings in Tobruk in the city area, primarily adding changes to the building exteriors, giving them this more war-torn look. So they looked very pristine before, very artificial. Now they look like actual buildings that have been involved in firefights and in gunfights. It's a much better look. It doesn't look as clean and sterile as it did before. However, I do think Tobruk still needs some work because the streets themselves look very clear, look very unimpacted by the war. I would assume for there to be more rubble, for some streets to be blocked off by barricades and stuff like that. Kind of like what you find in Karantan. That's not the case here in this map. So I hope they actually do change that in the future, because I don't think the city area is as well accomplished as in some other maps. Alright, that's going to be it for the video. There are a few more things that I didn't go into, especially a lot of bug fixes for different things, some map specific bug changes and whatnot. You can find those in the full patch notes, which I will link to down in the video description. If you enjoyed this video, then please give it a like, subscribe to the channel for more. It's nice to be back covering Hella Loose. And as always, thank you for watching, and I hope I will catch you in the next one.